My name is Tom Hume. I'm one of the co-founders of CureJM, and recently had a great opportunity to meet with Rob Dial. It started with a phone call, and it's ironic because he actually grew up on a very small little island in Florida that was going to every year of my life because my grandparents lived on that island, so it's pretty cool. Rob is a really interesting guy because he's an author, he's a speaker, and he's a podcaster. He's got a very popular podcast called MWF Motivation. So highly recommend, if you like what you hear today, definitely listen to it. And he's an author, and he wrote a book, and I love this title. It's Hack Your Goals. So I think Rob is a bit of a study of human psychology and paradigm shifts. And I facilitated the last session he did with the teens, and it was terrific because he just had them in a circle, both JM patients, siblings, and was really drawing them out. And it got to a point where the conversations were so good among them, he cut it a little bit earlier so they could all exchange phone numbers and stay connected. So I'd like to introduce Rob Dial.
Check. Good? Thank you. Thanks, guys. Ooh, that's loud. So I'm not, the only phrase that exists for me is motivational speaker, and I run a podcast called MWF Motivation, but I actually hate the word motivation, to be honest with you guys, because I think that everybody thinks that motivation is like some fairy comes and sprinkles motivational dust on you, and some days you have it and some days you don't. And so when originally they reached out to me and asked me to speak because I live in Austin, I was like, well, I don't know what you guys are going through. I don't know what your children are going through. I don't know anything about that. And so we were talking about what I could teach that would help. And the one thing that I'm obsessed with is human psychology, every single aspect of it. And the reason why is because I had to figure myself out because we couldn't afford a psychologist. And that was my in all honesty, it's funny, but it's true. And so just to kind of give you guys an idea of my story, so you have an idea of why I needed to figure myself out. So I did grow up on a little tiny island. It's called Anna Maria Island, and it sounds like you're like, oh man, he must have been really rich if you grew up on an island. We weren't. It was really poor. If you remember, a long time ago, it was poor, and so now it's super rich. I can't, my main goal in life is to be able to buy a house out there because it's going to cost about $1 million to $2 million, and so. Back then, we had to move off of the island because, in fact, my mom couldn't afford the house. So it was $125,000 at that point in time. So anyways, going back to my childhood, why I became obsessed with psychology and why I thought this would be really important to share with you guys. I had a pretty decent childhood up until about 9 years old, and then my father lost his job. And the reason why I lost his job is because his boss came and said, well, to my mom, your husband's an alcoholic. He drinks all the time. He comes to work. He's drunk. He leaves the house. He was perfectly fine. That's what she thought. He'd be drunk. And so marriage started to fall apart at that point in time. And at 10 years old, my parents got a divorce. And then what happened was, at 15 years old, my father was in between. He was in and out of jail. He's a great person, but he just had a lot of demons. And so part of the thing was I was trying to figure myself out. I was trying to figure him out. And when I was 15 years old, my father passed away from being an alcoholic. And so me being the inquisitive kid that I was, I wanted to try to figure out why did he not show up sometimes? Like, why was he absent? Why did he love alcohol more than he loved me? Right? That was kind of the way that I thought of it in my head. And so I went on this journey of let me try to figure myself out. I was lucky enough to be a kid who, instead of seeing the bad side of it, I tried to figure out the good side of it. And I've always told people the best day of my life and the worst day of my life was the day that my father passed away. And the reason why it was the worst, obvious reasons. The reason why it was the best, because I realized I'm going to die. And it made me obsessed with figuring out myself. And once I figured out myself, it made me obsessed with how can I help as many people as possible get past what took me 15 years to get past. And so once I figured it out, I'll kind of give you guys an idea. You guys know what Cutco knives are? You guys know Cutco knives? So I was 15 when my father passed away, lost, didn't know what to do, and I went in for an interview, and they were like, you can sell Cutco knives in people's houses. And I was like, how much money do these people make? And I saw kids my age making thousands of dollars, and I was like, whatever I have to do it. I'm not going to be poor. I'm going to pull myself out of the situation that we're in. And I became obsessed with personal growth. And what I started noticing, my mom now tells me, is that once that switch clicked, I turned into a completely different person. It was like the kid that was lost, the kid that didn't know what he was doing, the kid that was trying to figure out who he is, finally found out where he needed to go. And then since then, it's been obsession. Like, if I can fix myself, I can try to fix as many people as possible. And so when we were talking about what I should speak about, that was the thing that popped up where I was like, well, I don't know what you guys are going through. I don't know what your children or grandchildren are going through. But I do know human psychology and the way that they interact with people, the way that you interact with them, the way that they interact with you will all dictate how they're going to grow up and what they're going to do with themselves, but then also what they're going to do with their lives, and everything comes together. So I want to teach you guys a couple of things, what I've learned. Just so you have an idea, I started selling Cutco when I was 19, and the reason why I became obsessed with personal growth because it helped me, but also I started interviewing people that were 40, 50, 60 years old and training them. And it was hard to be a 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old training somebody that was 60, 65 and have them respect me. And so my thing was I need to figure out how to grow up quickly. And so that's what I did. And by the time I was 24 and I quit selling Cutco, I had trained over 2,000 sales reps how to sell Cutco, broke almost every record in the company in 65 years, and they did $5.6 million in sales. And so I learned that I was good at teaching people these things. And so I thought about it, and I was like, this is what I want to teach you guys, is just the human psychology of the way it works, because there's a lot of things that I've learned in the past 11 years that nobody knows exists. Only few people will teach these types of things. And nobody really teaches it the way I do, because I've kind of taken all of, I've made a smorgasbord of what I think is the best way of teaching it and getting it out to people. So the one thing that I do want you guys to realize is this. Your kids are freaking smart. Like, they are really smart. And I was just in the room with them for an hour and 45 minutes. And what I do know is this, is when a child has to go through something that is traumatic or hard for them, it forces them to grow up quickly. That's what happened with me. And I can't believe when I was like, wait, this kid's 12? And they were talking and how smart they are and how on point they are, and just the way that they see things is not the way their peers see things, just so you guys have an idea. And when I was able to get them out of their shells finally, which took some time, it was interesting. The main thing that I will tell you guys that every single one of them said is that the main thing they want to get out of this is just new friends' phone numbers. So if I'm going to give you guys the secrets of what happened over next door, they just want people who they can talk to that know what they're going through. That's it. That's all that they want. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to change this entire talk that I had for them. And I was like, we're going to figure out a way for us to all start talking to each other. So there was like 15 minutes of them just exchanging phone numbers and getting new friends and meeting new people. But they are super smart. And I think that that's a good thing for you guys to realize, because one of the things that I had put down even before I walked in was expectation dictate results. And I have a friend who was a teacher in Thailand. And in Thailand, by the age of 4 years old, they tell a kid and they put them in schools of whether they are smart or whether they are stupid. And there's levels in between they're smart and stupid, right? So you could be in 4th grade, whatever it might be, and you're level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. That level you're at the rest of your life, and that's the teacher that you're going to get. And the interesting thing about that is she said by the time they were in 8th grade or 10th grade, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, the ones who were a level 1, the lowest level, were the ones who were the rowdiest, they were the worst. And it's not because of the fact that that's how they were born, it's because that's the fact of the way they were raised and the expectations they were put on them. And an interesting study that has to do with that, and the reason why I want to tell you guys from an outsider's perspective how smart those kids are is because of this. I think that people that are put through something hard end up being a lot better. They either are more successful, or they make a bigger impact on the world, or they're happier because of the fact that they've been through something big as a child. And when you get to a certain age, just in my personal perspective, the way that they feel, I can understand, because I went through a father passing away, and there's a million stories. He knows Anna Marie Island. The one thing that was stored in my subconscious that I was able to figure out one day, of like, why am I not getting to where I want to be? Like, what is it? And it had to do with my paradigm, which I'll teach you guys for your personal reasons, the paradigm, but also if you can understand this, and you can understand how you're shifting your children's or grandchildren's paradigm, it's life-changing for people. Like, I've had people in my group coaching programs lose 50 pounds in 2 months, because it's like, oh, I'm on the outside looking. I'm not in my brain anymore. I'm outside of it looking in. And I'm like, oh, you guys know if someone's in a bad relationship and you're like, he's cheating on you, get out of the relationship. He's like, no, he's going to change, he's better. But then they get out and they're like, holy crap, he was terrible. That's how a lot of people are in their brains. That's every person. You're in your brain, you're going through all of these things. And so what I'm going to teach you will help you with that for yourself, which is good, so you guys can get something out of it. But if you can understand it for yourself, you can also understand it for your children as well. And so with the expectations dictating results, also I do want to do question and answers with you guys too, because that's something that really intrigues me, and I want to help you out in that way. But another way that expectations dictate results, and the reason why I want to tell you how, from the outside looking in, how smart those kids are, is because I personally believe what they're going through is going to make them happier, more successful, make a bigger impact on the world than any of their peers. It's not something that's holding them back. It's something that's going to push them forward if you allow it to push them forward. And that's what you guys have to realize, is there's not something that whatever they have, whatever they're going through is going to make them stronger because they're going through it now. And that's partially why they are so smart. It's because they're being forced to grow up and go through things that some people never go through. You know, I was talking with them, and is Marissa's mom here? Parents? Marissa? Is Marissa your kid? Oh. No, Marissa. So Marissa, I don't know. Lady who was up here, anybody in the last session? Lady with the curly hair? Does she have a daughter? They're like the same person. They look exactly the same. They act exactly the same too. But Marissa said, I said, I tried to change her mind because everyone thinks it's a problem. It's something that's holding me back. I said, what do you think the most positive thing about having JM is? So I was just trying to ask a question to make them think differently. And Marissa, I don't even know how old she is, she said, I'm so much stronger than all of the people that are around me because I listen to my friends complain about stuff. And I'm like, that's it? That's what you have to go through on a daily basis? I wish that's what I had to go through. Right? And she's like 13 years old. That's going to make a strong person who can make a huge impact on the world. And so with expectations dictating results, there was a study done about 15 years ago, and what they actually found was they had second graders take a quiz. It was a standard IQ quiz. But when they handed it out to the teachers, all of the teachers in the school, all the second grade teachers in the school, it said it was from Harvard, and they prepped all of them and said, hey, there's this brand new thing. This has never been really, like, this is cutting edge technology in the way the brain works. This quiz will make us understand if these children right here, if they're going to have massive spikes within the next 6 months to a year in their IQ and their learning abilities. It was a standard IQ test. So in other words, it was BS. They were lying to all of these teachers, right? And so what they did was they handed out these IQ tests. They had all the kids take it. They didn't even look at them. Well, actually they did because they recorded all of the scores. But they didn't take any of them and say, oh, these are, this kid scored the highest, whatever it was. They took random kids from them. They took a random teacher, 2 random teachers actually, and what they said was these kids, were actually random. These kids are going to, according to Harvard, have the biggest spike in their IQ over the next 6 months to a year. Out of all of their classmates, they are going to be the smartest. And so what happened was, a year down the road, they went and they're like, let's retest these kids with the exact same quiz. The kids who had the biggest spike were the kids who said, the quiz said they were going to have the biggest spike. But the thing was, that was a standard IQ test. What happened was the teacher's expectations dictated the child's results. And so the reason why I want to tell you how smart those kids are is because your expectations for them will also dictate the results of where they're going to be. And I'm telling you right now, they are going to be further ahead than everybody else, and they're going to make a bigger impact, because I was so surprised that some of them are 10 years old or 11 years old or 12 years old, because I felt like I was talking to 22-year-olds for some of them. And so your expectations for your children or grandchildren will dictate the results you're going to have. They might have JM, but that doesn't mean anything for what they can be in their future. And so I want to talk about quickly before I go into talking about the paradigm, the way the conscious mind and the subconscious mind works. This is not like some woo-woo BS. This is actually, clinically studied. The subconscious works, how the conscious mind works. And the easiest way to think of it is to kind of draw it out so people can understand it. So this is the thing that I read years ago, about 10 years ago, that really changed the way that I understood. Your conscious mind can control one thought at a time. That's it, right? Like I can't be thinking about like if I have to do laundry later, right now. I can't think about that because I'm too busy thinking about what has to come out of my mouth to make sure that I'm providing value to you guys. That's my conscious mind. My subconscious, though, is what stores everything that's ever happened to me in my entire life. Everything. Now, here's what's interesting. The easiest way to think of it, this is a golf ball, this is a basketball, right? Your conscious mind, little tiny golf ball. Your subconscious mind, basketball. But it stores every single thing that comes into it as true. If you guys know, back in, I think it was like 1928, 1930, the Germans, they destroyed everybody in track and field in the Olympics. And then they were like, how did they do so well in the Olympics? And the reason why was because what they had them do was races exactly the same. And then they would have them come into a room and they would have them visualize winning the race every single time, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times over 4 years. And what happened was their subconscious distorted as true. They're going to win. They're going to win. And so what happens is when your subconscious, when your brain thinks that you're doing something, whether you're actually doing it or not, the exact same neurological thing happens, and those things, the neurons fire in the exact same order as they would, even if you're not moving at all. Here's what's interesting, and this is why it's so important to understand your children's self-esteem, your children's psychology, is because whether you realize they're going to remember everything, or whether they realize they're going to remember everything, your subconscious mind will store everything. There was a study that was done trying to see if humans ever forget stuff, right? And they don't actually think that humans forget anything at all. It's just not top of mind. And the way they found this out, interesting story, was there was a surgeon. You can do surgery with somebody awake if you didn't know that. And so this was done, I think, in the 80s, when they first realized that the subconscious mind will store every single thing. It's like your filing cabinet. This lady was awake, and they were doing surgery. Her brain was open. Her skull was open. She was sitting there. And the guy was like, I think this is the part of the brain that holds everything. And what happened was he was touching her brain in different areas. And what she said was as he touched her brain in a specific area, she immediately was brought back to when she was 15 years old, having a conversation with her father. And she wasn't just remembering it. She was what she called reliving it. She saw him. She smelt the house when she was 15 years old. She sight, smells, sounds, everything. She relived the entire thing over again. And so what happens is whatever happens with your children, whatever happens what they're going through in school, it's all going to be stored in their subconscious mind. And that's why it's so important for you to understand the psychology of what's happening all of the time and how you influence it as well. So another thing I'll tell you guys about that in a second. But there's a thing called unconscious priming that's freaky that will help you guys out as well. So I'm going to talk to you guys about this, though. This is, in my personal opinion, in the past 11 years, in more than anything else, the thing that I've found really changes people's lives is understanding your paradigm. Now, you guys have all heard the word paradigm before, right? But you kind of know, like, there's paradigm shift. But what exactly does it, like, you just change your mind, or what is a paradigm and what is a paradigm shift, right? And so there's a thing called a paradigm circle, which if you jot down anything, this is the thing to jot down. So there's your paradigm, and this is going to feed into your belief, and this is why it's important to understand the way the conscious mind works, the way the subconscious mind works. Your paradigm feeds into your belief. So this will help you with your children, but honestly, this will 100% help you with yourself, with anything you've ever wanted to do. So your paradigm feeds into your belief feeds into your actions feed into your results, and your results feed back into your paradigm. So let me ask you guys a question. I'm going to need your help with this. What is, and you don't have to tell me, it's okay, you don't have to be like vulnerable or anything like that. Tell me what people's biggest fears are, the things that hold them back more than anything else in the world. Not spiders, not heights, or any of those types of fears. What's people's biggest fears in the world? Okay, so there's a couple of them. So rejection, failure. What else? Biggest fears, what keep people from doing what they really want to do?
Loneliness.
What's that?
Loneliness.
Loneliness.
Embarrassment.
Okay, being embarrassed.
Standing alone. Injury or death.
Death or injury. What else can you guys think?
Afraid of risk.
What's that?
Afraid of risk.
Afraid of risk. Change. That's a good one. Everybody's afraid of change.
Loss of control.
Losing control.
What others might think.
So being judged, maybe? So there's a few of them. There's also like not pretty enough, smart enough, fit enough, all of those things. Here's what's crazy, and this is like when my life started to change, but then also like all of my coaching started to change, was when I realized this and how these two connect with each other. And this is what I'll tell you is this. The way that we're raised, the way that society is, all of these things, the core of this, all of them. I run webinars, and there's only one time that I've ever been stumped on a fear, and that was the fear was growing up in a godless world. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if that one connects with all of these, but it's a big fear. But this is the core of it. When you look at all of these, the core is I'm not enough. Let me show you real quick. Fear of rejection, because I don't think that I'm enough to be accepted. The fear of failure, because I don't think that I'm enough to succeed. Also, there's also the fear of success. A lot of people have that. Why? Because I don't know if I'm enough to get there, and if when I do get to being successful, I don't know if I'm enough to be able to attain it and stay there. Loneliness, because you're afraid that people aren't going to accept you and stay around. Embarrassment, because you're afraid that people aren't going to accept you for the way that you are and you're going to do something wrong. Standing alone, because you're afraid that people aren't going to be around you or stay around you. You're going to lose your friends. You're going to lose your family. Fear of death or injury. Well, that one's a little bit, I don't know about that one. That one kind of goes with it, I guess, a little bit. Risk, because you feel like if something's risky, you might not be able to actually succeed and do it. The fear of change, because I don't know if I'm enough to actually change and be okay through the change. Fear of losing control, because I don't know if I'm enough to actually stay in control. The fear of being judged, because I don't know if I'm enough for people to actually accept me the way that I am. You guys see how almost every single fear in the world comes back to I am not enough? And so when you can understand this and the way that these relate to each other, the way I think of this, just to kind of give you guys an idea, I'm a visual person. I have to see things. Whenever I think of things, I see them in my head or I put them into an analogy, this is kind of the way the world works. Is it kind of goes like this. If you guys remember when you were doing like little brain dumps when you were a kid and getting ideas and brainstorming and stuff, everyone's fear seems to be that they're not enough in some sort of way, and then they have other little fears, not being smart enough, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of all of these things. Now, the reason why this is important and how this works is this, and this is why it's important. It's important for you guys, for anything that you do. If you've ever felt in a situation that you're in that you know, this is huge with people all the time, where I always hear people where they're like, I self-sabotage somehow. I've self-sabotaged relationships. I've started being successful. 2, 3, 4 months, I'm doing really well. And then a year down the road, I'm in the exact same position. I start making more money. And then a year down the road, I have the exact same amount in my bank account. All of these things. And it has to do with paradigm. And so let me give you an example of exactly what I mean by this. So your paradigm is your subconscious, which is why I had to cover this. Is your subconscious, and your belief is your conscious mind. You're aware. If I were to say, everybody write down your biggest fear, how you hold yourself back the most. If I gave you 5 minutes, you could probably start to figure it out, right? That's your belief. But your paradigm is a little bit harder to figure out. I will tell you this, after working with thousands of people with paradigms, it almost always, and I mean 99.9% of the time, not to scare the crap out of you, comes from either their mother or it comes from their father, or the way that they interact with each other. Every single time, which is scary because I know for parents, especially mothers, that's like your biggest freaking fear in the world, right? Like the best mothers in the world always think they're screwing everything up, right? So I'm gonna try not to make you think that by going through this, but that's just the way that it works. We're all hard on ourselves. Mothers are very hard on themselves. But it's always the father's fault, so don't worry about it, ladies. So your paradigm is your subconscious. Now that we've covered that your subconscious doesn't really forget anything, if your subconscious says, and you're not necessarily sure because you're in this bad relationship, you're in it, you haven't taken a step out of it and looked from the outside looking in yet. If your paradigm is that you're not enough, it's going to feed into some sort of belief, not being smart enough, pretty enough, being rejected, any of these things. And if you feel like you're not enough and your belief is some sort of not being enough, what type of action do you think you're going to take if you don't think that you're enough in some sort of way? None or very little, right? And then what type of results do you get? Very little. And then what happens is it feeds back into your paradigm and it says, see, you didn't get the results that you wanted because you're not enough. This makes sense to how this works? This works with money. If I could tell you the thing that changed my life was when I was able to figure out this works exactly with money too. I was raised really poor, even though we grew up on an island. Like, it seems amazing, but it was poor back then. I remember my mom getting rejected for food stamps because she had a car. So she had to get a job at a grocery store because we got food as it was about to expire. So that's the way we ate. I remember the one time that I was 9 years old and I was smart enough to at least understand what was going on and wasn't stupid about it, but we had to go to a women's shelter just for me to get a toy for Christmas. I still remember what it was. It was a little truck, like off-wheels truck. And so she would say stuff. We don't have enough money. I've never once been on well, that's a lie. I took my mom to Italy 2 years ago, but before then, we had never gone on a vacation my entire life together. Right? So we never went on vacations. People always had money. She would always say stuff like, oh yeah, we don't have money. We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil. You have to screw people over in order to get money. Right? You guys, some of you guys have heard these things, correct? Some of you guys remember your parents, when you were younger, fighting about money, right? Or telling you can't have something because you don't have the money. Money doesn't grow on trees. You've heard this before. And so that you make your own paradigm around money. And so if your paradigm around money is set to something of what I just said, money is the root of all evil, money is hard to come by, you have to work hard to get money, you have to screw people over, that feeds into your belief. And if that's your conscious belief, what type of actions do you think you're going to really take to get money? You're going to take very little action. And when you take very little action, what type of results are you going to get? Very little results. And that's going to feed back into your paradigm saying, see, you didn't make money because you don't deserve it. You didn't make money because you're not enough to make it. You didn't make money because it's the root of all evil. You don't want it. Also, here's the other thing. If you do make a good amount of money, this will also make you spend money quicker to get rid of it. Because in your conscious mind, it's not good, and you don't ever want to keep something that's good. So, side note, in case you guys wanted to learn about money, that's a little side note that really changed my life with it. So, this is your glass ceiling. How does this work? What does this have to do with anything? Think of a thermometer in your house. Okay, if you set your thermometer to 70 degrees, if the air goes up to 72, if it gets a little bit hotter, what's going to happen? There's a mechanism inside of your thermostat that's going to click the AC on, and it's going to pull it back, right? Not rocket science. You guys all know how this works. Now, if it gets colder, what's going to happen? Heat's going to kick on. It's going to pull it back to 70 degrees, and it's going to stay there. And so if you've been in the position where you're in the exact same spot you've been in for years and you want more, but you're just in the exact same position, it's because you found your 70 degrees. That's really the way that it works. You've hit the maximum ceiling of what you in your subconscious believe that you're worth. And so the thing about that, I'll tell you how to get past it, is you will also realize that this is happening with your children as they're getting older, as they're growing. They are also having a paradigm that's being grown based on your expectations, based on what you expect from them, the way you think, the way that you talk, the way that you get to speak to each other, the way you speak to them, speak to their brother, sister, all of those things. And so the easiest way to think of it is, if the thermometer's set at 70 degrees and it happens to get to 72, it's going to pull it back down. Right? This is why if you've ever been in a situation, and you might be able to at this point in time notice already something that's happened with your children's paradigm, right? You can, as I'm teaching this, it's going to help you, but I'm more trying to also teach you so you can understand how this is helping your children, or how it will help your children, is if you've ever started to get successful, you've ever started to do better than you thought you were going to do. You started to make more money, you had more sales, you got further ahead on quota or something like that, and then you look back in 6 months, like I've said, and you're in the exact same position, it's because you've taken actions to pull yourself back, right? Like I was in sales for 12 years. This happened with everybody where it was like you'd have a really big first 2 weeks, and then people start doing things. They stop making the phone calls they need to. They stop doing certain things that made them more successful. This is the complete, this is self-sabotage 101 is what it is. And so the way that this works also is if you go down to 68 degrees, you're going to pull yourself back up. So this works, paradigms work 100% with your mind, but it also works around money. If you've ever been in the situation, the thing that completely changed my life was when I learned this with money, right? Where I was making a ton of money as a 21-year-old, way more money than a 21-year-old ever should make. But I literally had no money in my bank account. And I was like, I don't know why it is. 2 reasons why. Number one, because I thought money was the root of all evil. I was taking actions to get rid of it and didn't even realize it. Number one. And then number two is as soon as I would start to make more, I would do little tiny things to spend more, right? Things I wouldn't think about. I'd go out to eat one more time, or I'd buy an extra drink whenever I was out with my friends or whatever it might be. And then I'd have the exact same amount in my bank account all of the time. Now, the way that this is going to work for your children, because I know some of you guys are thinking this question, why is pretty much most 99% of people I've ever met and dealt with in this situation, why is it that they're not enough? I don't know the exact reason, but after doing a lot of studying of people and figuring out the way that people interact, the way that we're raised, the way that anybody's raised in general, if you're raised in society, it's just kind of the way it's going to be. You can't really change the fact that no matter what, there's a good chance your paradigm's not enough. There's a good chance your children's paradigm's not enough. No matter how great they're raised. I have people that are in my coaching that are like, my parents were amazing. They're still more in love than they ever have been. Why am I still feeling like I'm not enough? And it's not necessarily, the parents are going to help with it, but the average child, just so you guys have an idea, I read a study that was done by Harvard. The average child is reprimanded 8 times more than they're praised. Right? I don't have children. I have a lot of cousins. My sister has so many kids running all over the place that I have to take a nap within being there 35 minutes. Right? So I don't know how to raise children as well as you guys do, but I do know that you don't have to have a psychology degree in order to raise children. And so what happens is a lot of people raise their kids, not saying you guys do, but a lot of people raise their kids the way that you would reprimand a dog that's doing something you don't want it to. It does something wrong, you smack it on the nose, you show it what it's supposed to do, right? And so it's just natural the way that we're raised by our parents, the way that they're raised by their parents, which is obviously much harder than the way that we're raised, that it's just kind of like that. spank on the butt, whatever it is, but they're reprimanded 8 times more than they're praised. So what does that mean? That means they think that I'm not enough in my parents' eyes 8 times more than I am enough. So that's number one. That's the first place that it starts. Number 2, advertising doesn't help, right? Advertising has, just so you guys know, has the best psychologists in the world because their point, they know how this works. Their job in advertisements is to make you think that you're not enough, and the only thing that will make you be enough is to what? Buy their product, right? Whenever you buy a product, whenever you buy a new car or you buy a new house, you're never buying the product. You guys realize that? You're not buying the product. What you're buying is the feeling that you hope the product will give you. That's it. And that's why you get excited about the new car, and then 6 months later you're like, oh, this isn't that great. Why did I spend so much money on it, right? That was good. That was good. She just goes and looks right at him. So I guess that one connected with somebody. So you're buying it. The other thing is this. In reality, your frontal lobe, which makes all of the decisions, like all of your inhibitions, is not fully developed until 25. I've done stuff in my life that I think back now that I'm 30 years old and I'm like, I would never do that again. Like just stuff that makes no sense. So naturally, kids are reprimanded a lot more. Like I was at my sister's house. My sister has the 4 best kids ever, in my opinion. Like they're so nice. They're like, they'll do anything for you. When you come in, they'll ask you if you want a glass of water and all of these things. But Joseph, who's her youngest, he's 5 years old. It was last time I was back there was for Christmas. My mom had just gotten all of them pillows, right? Because she got them like nice pillows. They were on sale, whatever. And so my mom's pillow was there. And Joseph was cuddling with it in the morning as he was watching TV. And Joseph just decided he didn't want to get up to go to the bathroom, right? Just peed on my mom's brand new pillow, right? It's the sweetest kid ever just did it. Why? His frontal lobe isn't developed. It's just, he does stuff that just doesn't make any sense to us now that we're older. Right? So naturally, there's just reprimanding that has to come from it. Also, the other thing about it is this. Failing tests in school, from the studies that are starting to come out, schooling is completely messed up. And the reason why is because one kid can fail one test, which doesn't show you how smart the kid's going to be. Right? It doesn't show you, like for me, I know I developed really late. Right? It doesn't show you how smart the kid's going to be or if they're going to go to Harvard when they're in 2nd grade, but they can fail one test in 2nd grade. They can take that too hard. It feeds directly into their paradigm, and what happens? They start failing every single test for the rest of their life because they failed one test when they were 8 years old. And so with society, with ads, with being reprimanded more than they're praised, with the frontal lobe not being developed until they're 25, I think everybody's, the bane of my existence is how do I get people to not have that anymore? I honestly don't know if there's a way to do it. So naturally, I'm going to tell you guys, this is just the way the paradigm works. So how do you get past this? Because that's usually the next question, like, oh crap, well, how do I break the circle? The important thing to know is this. You don't have to believe in yourself in order to do something. You don't have to believe in yourself in order to take action. So this, for your kids, if you can understand this, you can legitimately change the whole way they feel about themselves. Belief doesn't it's part of the paradigm circle, but it doesn't have to be there in order to get the results that you want. You don't have to believe in yourself in order to take action. If you can have willpower, you guys can all agree you've had something that you've done in your life where you didn't really believe in yourself, but you just put so much action into it that you just started getting results, right? And so here's the deal. Your paradigm is set at 70 degrees. It's there. And if you've been hitting this glass ceiling for a long time, if you've been in the same position for a long time, it's set. It's hard to get past. I will tell you that. Is it impossible? Absolutely not. Just because you don't believe in yourself doesn't mean that you can't take action, right? So if you normally would put in, a 5 on whatever it is you're going through, if you could put a 7, 8, 9, whatever it is, put action in, that's further along, more than what you normally would, you're naturally just going to get more results, right? If you're a salesperson and you don't believe in yourself, doesn't mean you can't make 100 phone calls. And if you make 100 phone calls, you'll eventually start getting results, right? And you'll start getting results that don't line up with your paradigm. And this is at the point where, like I said, most people quit. Or they start doing things they stop making 100 phone calls, they start going to 70. And then they go to 50. And then they go to 40 or whatever it might be. But what happens is this. The way to get past it is two ways to change your paradigm and to change your children's paradigm as well. Number one is results. And number two is repetition. Those are really, out of all of the things, everyone I've worked with, all of the studies, all of those things, repetition and results. That's it. If you keep getting results that are really good, eventually your paradigm has to go, well, crap, maybe I'm actually better than I thought I was. Right? If your kids, for instance, how this is going to work is if you have a kid that's not great at taking tests, or they've gotten bad grades, right? We've talked about how one kid can get one bad grade and it can change their life. Well, if they normally get bad grades or something's troubling them or whatever it might be, if you can get them to get results for a little while and show them, you're smart, you're smart, you're smart, they will start, once again, expectations dictate results. They'll start doing things that will make them get the results that line up with it. The difference between a paradigm and a thermostat, though, is if you keep getting results at 72, eventually your paradigm has to go, all right, 71. And then you start going 72, 72, 72, and it goes, all right, 72. You guys have all been here before, right? You start off in a new job or you start doing something new, and you don't believe in yourself, right? You don't believe in yourself. All you do is whatever you're told, right? You're just like, all right, I'll do this. I'll do whatever they say. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll just do it. And what happens, you put the action in, you get the results, and what happens? You start believing in yourself, right? It's the exact same way for your kids. I'll go back to the tests again, but there's many different ways. Sports, anything that they could possibly do. But if they're taking tests and they haven't gotten good grades, well then, as a parent, if you can make them get good grades, do whatever you possibly can to help them get good grades, and start showing them over and over and over again through the results, they'll start to go, oh, I am actually smart. I am better at this. And so that's a little bit of an idea. I hope I didn't freak you guys out too much. The last thing I'll tell you is this, before we go into question and answers that you guys might have, is everything that happens, I'm trying to not to freak you guys out with stuff, because there's a lot of things that I know some of you guys are like, oh crap, I don't know if I want to know this. There's a thing called unconscious priming, okay? And unconscious priming is another way of mind control, is another way of thinking of it. And once again, Harvard did this study, and what they did was they thought, okay, we're going to take a randomly selected group of people, we're going to take the exact same story with the exact same quiz, and we're going to hand that to 100 people and see if we can change their minds by doing something 15 minutes before, right? And so what they did was this. They had a story about a person, real short story, and then all of these different, tell us what you think about this person. And what they did was they had an actor have a hot cup of coffee, and they found a kid that was standing there. And they walked up to the kid, and they said, hey, I got to tie my shoe. Will you hold this for me real quick? And 50 kids, they handed him a hot cup of coffee, right? They handed him a hot cup of coffee. They tied their shoe, they picked up their coffee, and they walked away. And that was it. 15 minutes later, a different person came up and said, hey, can you take part of a real quick study for us? They said, sure. They said, okay, here's a short story. Read this short story, and then just answer these 10 questions right here, and that'll be it. So they read the short story, they answer the 10 questions, they go on their way. The next people, so they had that done with 50 kids. They walked up to him, the actor walked up to a different person, handed them a cold cup of coffee, iced coffee, said, hey, will you hold this while I tie my shoe? They tie their shoe real quick, they say thank you, and they walk away. 15 minutes later, somebody walks up to them, and they give them a sheet of paper, the exact same sheet of paper, and said, tell us what you think about this, answer the questions. 80% of the people who were handed a hot cup of coffee rated the person in the story, the exact same story with the exact same questions. 80% of them rated them as outgoing, warm, and trustworthy for the hot cup of coffee. The people who had the cold cup of coffee rated the person as shallow, not outgoing, and someone that you cannot trust. So what does that show you? I personally, if I'm being honest with you, I think the Kardashians are the worst thing that's ever happened to this planet. It looks like you guys do too. Perfect. So the reason why is this. Because if you can be influenced the way that you view somebody on a piece of paper 15 minutes later by the cup of coffee that you're given Imagine all of the stimuli that's coming into our brain at one point in time throughout the day and how that's influencing and literally tinting your worldview of everything. So I don't know what's going on in the news, I'll be honest with you. Facebook doesn't exist. If you guys use a computer and you go on Facebook, you want to change your life, there's something called Newsfeed Eradicator. If you use Google Chrome, it will take your newsfeed away when you go on Facebook and replace it with a motivational quote. So it's helped me out because I don't have to see all of these negative things and everyone bickering back and forth and all of that. But it gives you an idea of the conversations that you have with your children and the conversations that you guys have with your spouses, and just overhearing parts of that conversation and how it changes your children's worldview, but also changes your worldview. So that's the idea of how to shape your self-esteem. So I'm open for questions for you guys. We've got like 10 or 15 minutes. So any questions you guys have, I want to know what you guys are going through and how I can help you, because I've helped thousands of people, but from I don't know if anybody's ever been in your guys' situation. So I read a lot about psychology, children's psychology, books about it, all of those things. And if there's any way I can help you guys, I want to answer all the questions you guys have. So, questions at all? Don't be shy.
I find it with my granddaughter, because she can't do the things that she used to be able to.
He's going to give you the mic. There's people on live stream. I think they need to hear you. You got to sing first, though.
I find with my granddaughter that she used to be involved in a lot more. She had a lot more circle of friends.
Right.
And her sports, she can't do the sports anymore. And I think that made her feel like she wasn't the same as her friends.
Right.
And I think she pulled back a little bit from her friends. And I'm looking at this, and we're working very hard on that. And it's helped. She's getting a little better. She has her own little project. She bakes cupcakes. She has a little business. And that has given her a lot of self-esteem.
It's awesome.
And it's made a change. But her friends and everything, it wasn't like they left her.
Right.
It was that she couldn't participate anymore. So it was hard for her. And she started to feel like, well, I can't walk as well. I can't, all this. And she's very smart. Very smart.
Yeah.
She's compensated in a lot of ways.
Can you guys relate to that? Do you guys have something else in some sort of way that relates? It's the perfect example of the test taking, right? One thing can change, and then their perspective of themselves, and this is why it's important for why we called it shaping your child's self-esteem, is because when something like that happens, you as a parent have to come in and be the person that allows them to, the one thing that I tried to get across to all of them when I was sitting down and talking to them is this is going to make you more powerful, right? Like that was my whole thing of trying to talk to them, because when I first came in, it was more of like, well, because they hadn't met each other at that point in time, because they hadn't gone around and talking to each other, it was more of like, well, nobody knows what I'm going through, I have this, and I'm not sure what my future is going to be like, right? And so my idea was with them, well, why don't I try to see if we can have them personally spin it? And the way that you can change anyone's mindset is not to tell them what they need to hear, is to ask them the question that allows them to figure it out, or to continue asking questions until it gets there. And here's the reason why. For me, when I first started managing people when I was 20 years old, I was just the guy that played sports, and I was like, just do it. Like, go, just do it. And my number one sales rep, was a guy, which he ended up being, he's in the NFL right now, which is kind of cool. And so he was there, and he was the only one that responded to it, because I could push and push and push, because he was used to it with his coaches. You guys know Doug Baldwin, Seattle Seahawks? Anybody ever heard of him? Nobody? Okay, we got one. Oh yeah, because he's a Patriots fan. He played in the Super Bowl against you guys. And so he was the only one that responded to it. And I was like, well, I need to figure out how to manage people better, because he's the only one that's responding to it. And so over years and years and years, I realized that the only way to really do it is to be able to take what people think as flaws, right? And turn them into something that they see as an actual strength, right? All of people's failures, I had a conversation on the way over here with a coaching client as well. And she was like, this is my problem, this is my problem, this is where I'm failing, this is where I'm failing. And I said, the problem is, you see your failures as flaws. Your failures are not flaws. Your failures are just learning. It's places for you to learn. That's all that it is. I watched a thing with Oprah not too long ago, and she's in a room with hundreds of people, and she says, I guarantee that I failed more than every single person combined in here. The only difference is I learned from each one of them instead of letting it hold me back. And so the thing with all of you guys is, and the way that I was doing with them was I was like, how can I make them think that they are more powerful because of this? And then so I just asked the question. And I said, I went to every single one of them. And I was like, let me know if you have JM or if you're a sibling of someone who has JM. Like I have JM, and the question that I asked every single one of them is, why is that a good thing? What have you been able to learn from it? You know, their answers were amazing because of the fact that they were able to, like, the answers that, I wish I would have had it recorded. Sorry guys, I didn't even think about it. But the answers that they gave were just so smart and on point. And that's why I was like, these kids are so mature, was because they don't see it as a flaw or something that's going to hold them back. And I said, think of people that you look up to. And I don't know if Grant's parents are in here, but Grant's like, I love Walt Disney. I was like, tell me about Walt Disney, right? What about Walt Disney made him amazing? He was different than everybody else. He thought differently, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, so is being different a good thing or is it a bad thing then? And they're all like, oh, well, it's a really good thing. I said, yeah, if you think of some of the people that you admire the most, would you notice them in a crowd? Do they fit out? Are they different? And the thing was, all I had to do was just ask them questions that made the connections in my brain of, it's okay. This is a good thing. I'm going to be, the kids in my class, like I opened up and told you guys originally, the kids in my class, they don't have the superpower that I do, which is the mindset to get past that. They're crying about their brother and sister when in reality, I'm going through things that are way worse. And it's a thing that can make you more powerful versus something that can hold you back. And so the way to make somebody change their mindset is to not tell them that, is to ask them the questions that'll make them find that out on themselves. The thing that helped me with coaching was when I stopped telling people, like I was originally saying with Doug Baldwin. He was the only one that I could just tell him what to do. I stopped telling people stuff and started asking them questions. And the reason why you want to do that is because when you tell somebody something, right? You have kids. You all have kids, right? You know, you tell them something and then they don't freaking listen to you. It's because you're telling them. But if you ask them questions, they have to make new neurological pathways in order to figure it out. And when you make a new neurological pathway, it is there. You can never get rid of a new neurological pathway. You can only strengthen it. That's the only thing that you can do. And so if you want to shift their mindset or shift their self-esteem, ask them the questions, what's positive from it? How are you better than all of the other kids that are around you? What are you learning that's making you better? How is this your superpower and not your flaw? And once we started asking those questions, those kids like lit up. They started talking to each other. They started exchanging phone numbers. They're all best friends. And I don't even know what they're doing anymore, but I know that they were talking for a long time. And the main thing I want you guys to realize from all of this, from everything, is that they just want more people that are like them. That's it. That's what I came to realize in an hour and 45 minutes with them. And they sat, they weren't originally talking to each other, they started talking, they started going through, oh, well, tell me about the medication you take. Oh my gosh, I hate that too. It tastes terrible, doesn't it? Oh yeah, it coats my throat whenever I take it. Oh, what do you take instead? What did you do? Are you allowed to have Snickers anymore? Me either. Oh, and so it's like they just want someone to make them feel understood. And the friendships that they're building from that. Oh, also the other thing they said is, I just really hope when the conference gets done today, our parents will let us hang out with each other. So FYI, that's all they want to do. So good. That was perfect though. So it's when something like that happens where they can't play a sport, they start thinking that there's something wrong with them. But you can be the person that says, hey, this is your superpower. Hey, this will make you further along. This will help you out. Oh, you now have your baking company. Entrepreneur already. Right? There's something positive coming from it in all sorts of situations. And if you cannot spotlight it, but if you can ask them the question and have them figure it out themselves, it'll make that pathway, and that pathway will never go away. Any more questions? So that's all I got for you guys. If you guys have any questions, if there's something in here where you're like, I know a lot of this is like drinking from a fire hose. I understand it. If you guys have any questions, you can email me. It's rob@mwfmotivation.com. MWF Motivation stands for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's when my podcast comes out. Also, if you guys want to help shift their mindset, I have 200 as of today, 234 free episodes that are up there on the podcast. So if you go to, you can either email me, rob@mwfmotivation.com, or you can go to mwfmotivation.com. I'll help you guys any way that I can, because I got attached to him after talking to him for an hour and 45 minutes. So I appreciate you guys.